Welcome back to this channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. My enemies are many, my equals are none. In the shade of olive trees, they said Italy could never be conquered. In the land of pharaohs and kings, they said Egypt could never be humbled. In the realm of forest and snow, they said Russia could never be tamed. Now they say nothing. They fear me, like a force of nature, a dealer in thunder and death. I say, I am Napoleon, I am emperor. He was a man who conquered continents, a leader who reshaped the world with his sheer will, yet in the end, was undone by the very ambition that fueled his rise. This is the epic saga of Napoleon Bonaparte, a story of glory, power, and the haunting echoes of an empire that once seemed invincible. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the rugged island of Corsica, a land steeped in ancient traditions and fierce independence. As a young boy, he was fiercely intelligent and deeply ambitious, qualities that would define his future. At just 16, Napoleon enrolled in a military academy in Paris. There, he was often seen as an outsider, mocked for his Corsican accent and diminutive stature. But what he lacked in physical presence, he made up for with an extraordinary mind. He devoured books on history and strategy, learning from the great commanders of the past, and soon enough, his brilliance began to shine. The French Revolution erupted in 1789, turning the world upside down. The old order was crumbling, and in the chaos, opportunities arose for those bold enough to seize them. Napoleon, with his sharp intellect and ruthless determination, was ready. He quickly distinguished himself as a military leader, showing his mettle in the siege of Toulon, where his audacious tactics led to a decisive victory and earned him a promotion to brigadier general at just 24 years old. In 1796, at the age of 26, Napoleon was given command of the French army of Italy, a ragtag, poorly supplied force. The mission was daunting: to take on the powerful Austrian Empire and its allies who controlled much of northern Italy. But where others saw an insurmountable challenge, Napoleon saw an opportunity to carve his name into history. With a combination of speed, surprise, and cunning, Napoleon launched a series of lightning-fast attacks, catching his enemies off guard. His strategy was revolutionary. He divided his forces to strike simultaneously at multiple points, then swiftly reassembled them to deliver a concentrated blow. One by one, the Austrian armies fell before him. The battles of Montenotte, Lodi, and Rivoli became legends, and with each victory, Napoleon's fame grew. But it wasn't just his military genius that won him Italy. It was his ability to inspire his troops. He addressed them not as mere soldiers, but as comrades, sharing in their hardships and victories. His men adored him, calling him the Little Corporal as a term of endearment. Despite his commanding authority, by the end of the campaign, Napoleon had not only secured Italy for France, but had also established himself as the most formidable military leader of his time. The Treaty of Campo Formio, signed in 1797, marked the end of the war and the beginning of Napoleon's rise as a statesman. But the conquest of Italy was just the beginning. Napoleon's ambitions knew no bounds. In 1798, with Europe at an uneasy peace, Napoleon set his sights on the east. His next target was Egypt, a land of ancient mysteries and strategic importance, as it controlled the trade routes to India. But Napoleon's motives were not just strategic. He was driven by a desire to emulate the great conquerors of history, like Alexander the Great, and to bring the light of civilization to the east. The Egyptian campaign began with the stunning victory at the Battle of the Pyramids, where Napoleon's disciplined forces decimated the Mamluk army with modern tactics and superior firepower. The battle was a showcase of the revolutionary tactics that had made him famous, using squares of infantry to repel cavalry and focusing fire on the enemy's weakest points. Napoleon's triumphs were not limited to the battlefield. He also embarked on a scientific and cultural mission, bringing scholars and scientists with him to study the ancient land. This led to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which would eventually unlock the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs. But even as he reveled in the glory of his victories, trouble loomed on the horizon. The British, under Admiral Horatio Nelson, dealt Napoleon a crushing blow at the Battle of the Nile, destroying the French fleet and cutting off his army from Europe. Stranded in Egypt, Napoleon faced a series of challenges, including uprisings and the harsh desert environment. Yet, even in these dire circumstances, he managed to hold his army together, conducting a daring campaign into Syria, where he won several battles, but was ultimately forced to retreat due to plague and supply issues. By 1799, with the situation in Egypt deteriorating and political unrest brewing in France, Napoleon made a bold decision. He abandoned his army and returned to France, where he seized power in a coup d'état, becoming the first consul. The Egyptian campaign had been a mixed success, but it further cemented Napoleon's reputation as a leader who could defy the odds. In 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French, a moment of unparalleled glory that marked the zenith of his power. Under his rule, France became the dominant force in Europe, with Napoleon orchestrating a series of brilliant military campaigns that expanded his empire to its greatest extent. His victories at Austerlitz, Jena, and Wagram crushed the armies of Austria, Prussia, and Russia, leaving him seemingly invincible. But with great power came great enemies. The other European powers, alarmed by Napoleon's dominance, formed coalitions against him, but time and again, they were defeated. Napoleon's empire stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the borders of Russia. He was the master of Europe, and yet, his ambition knew no bounds. In 1812, Napoleon embarked on his most ambitious campaign yet, the invasion of Russia. He assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen. The Grand Army, over 600,000 strong, composed of soldiers from across his vast empire. His goal was to bring the Russian empire to its knees and force Tsar Alexander I to bow to his will. The campaign began with success, as Napoleon's forces advanced deep into Russian territory. But the Russians employed a scorched earth strategy, retreating and burning everything in their path, leaving nothing for the French to live off. The heat of the summer gave way to the bitter cold of the Russian winter, and Napoleon's army, already weakened by disease and starvation, began to falter. The turning point came at the Battle of Borodino, one of the bloodiest battles of the Napoleonic Wars. Though the French won the field, it was a Pyrrhic victory that cost them dearly. Napoleon entered Moscow, expecting a peace offer, but the city was deserted and soon engulfed in flames. With no way to sustain his troops, Napoleon was forced to retreat. The retreat from Moscow was a nightmare. Harassed by Russian forces, plagued by hunger and the freezing cold, the Grand Army disintegrated. Men and horses died by the thousands, and the once proud army was reduced to a shadow of its former self. By the time Napoleon crossed back into Poland, only a fraction of his army remained. The invasion of Russia had been a catastrophic failure, and it marked the beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire. In the wake of the Russian disaster, Napoleon's enemies sensed their moment. The Sixth Coalition, composed of Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria, and other nations, united against him. In 1813, they dealt him a decisive defeat at the Battle of Leipzig, known as the Battle of Nations. For the first time, Napoleon was on the defensive, fighting to preserve what remained of his empire. By 1814, the situation was dire. The Allies invaded France, and despite a series of desperate and brilliant counterattacks by Napoleon, the odds were overwhelming. On April 6, 1814, Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the small Mediterranean island of Elba, where he watched as the empire he had built was dismantled. But Napoleon was not finished yet. In 1815, he made a daring escape from Elba and returned to France, where he rallied the people to his side. This period, known as the 100 Days, was Napoleon's final bid for power. He assembled an army and marched north to meet the Allies once more. The climax came at the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. It was a day that would seal Napoleon's fate. Despite his best efforts, Napoleon's forces were decisively defeated by the British, under the Duke of Wellington and the Prussians under General Blücher. Napoleon's return to power was over almost as quickly as it had begun. After Waterloo, Napoleon was captured and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. There, cut off from the world, he spent the last 6 years of his life in isolation, reflecting on his extraordinary career and the forces that had driven him to such heights, and ultimately, to such depths. Napoleon Bonaparte died on May 5, 1821, far from the Europe he had once ruled. Yet his legacy endures. He was a man of contradictions, military genius whose ambition led to both his greatest triumphs and his ultimate downfall. He reformed the laws, institutions, and boundaries of Europe, many of which still bear his influence today. The Napoleonic Code remains the foundation of legal systems in many countries. His military tactics are still studied in military academies around the world. But Napoleon's story is also a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. He once said, "I am the revolution," but in the end, the forces he unleashed consumed him. He reached for the stars, but in his quest for power, he lost everything. This was the rise and fall of Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who changed the world, only to be changed by it. As we look back on his life, we are reminded that even the greatest of leaders are, in the end, only human.